Okay, we are live. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to the Law Intense YouTube channel. My name is Govind Singh, and we are back with another Hindu analysis session. Today is 24th of December. We are about to witness Christmas tomorrow and then the New Year in 5 days. So, yeah, I hope the season of festivities is also looming upon you as well, and you all are charged up to enter the next year with a lot of enthusiasm. That being said, let's begin with our today's analysis session. So we have multiple interesting topics to look at today. So we'll just get right to the newspaper and then we'll come back and analyze those three, four important topics in detail. All right. Anyone of you who's watching me live, please give me some responses if I'm audible, visible, if presentation is visible. Can I have a very quick yes in the chat box from everyone before we begin? Priyanshi is here. Good afternoon. All right, so let's begin. Let's start today's session. I'll quickly share the newspaper with you all. Okay, so this is the Hindu newspaper for today, the Delhi edition, 24th of December. This is the front page. Three suspected Khalistan operatives shot dead in UP. Okay, interesting. Bangladesh writes to India seeking Hasina's extradition. Now, this is important from a competitive point of view. This is not that important. Now, why is Sheikh Hasina's extradition important? Because interim government has been operating in Bangladesh for quite a while now. Sheikh Hasina government was ousted from power, and then Muhammad Yunus took control. Now, the Bangladeshi government is seeking an extradition of Sheikh Hasina. What is an extradition? Extradition is when a person has escaped a country and taken refuge in a different country. The origin country can ask the other country to send that person back to their original country if there is an extradition treaty in place. Now, do Bangladesh and India have an extradition treaty? Yes, they do. In fact, India has called a few people from Bangladesh through extradition as well in the past few years. So it would be interesting to look at whether India would proceed with this request or not. For now, Bangladesh has sent a note verbal. Now, what is a note verbal? A note verbal is an official communication through diplomats, but it is not signed by anyone. So it is a less formal way of communicating that we want to seek extradition of a person. It would have been more formal. It would have been signed by the interim president or the foreign secretary or the foreign affairs minister. But this is just a, you could say, indirect communication. It is just a less formal way of communicating that we want to extradite Sheikh Hasina. So the article says Bangladesh has sent India a note verbal seeking extradition of its deposed PM Sheikh Hasina. Advisor on Foreign Affairs Tawheed Hossain informed the media. And what else are they saying? Bangladesh has written to Government of India. We have sent a letter to the Foreign Ministry seeking repatriation of Sheikh Hasina. Matter is being processed. And we have an extradition treaty with India. So we'll see how India proceeds with this particular request. On the left-hand side, Shankar to begin 6-day US visit today. So this would be interesting to see what are the developments which are made after this particular visit by Dr. Shankar. Then this is an interesting article which we'll discuss a little bit. Center scraps no detention policy for class 5 and 8. That means if you fail to pass your exams in standard 5 and standard 8, you would not just be promoted to the next class, 6th or ninth. There are new mechanisms in place now. There would be a re-examination, there would be redressal measures, and if you're still not able to pass, then you would be asked to repeat the class. So no more getting promoted to the next class without clearing the exams. So that is an interesting development. Then we have the next news: domestic needs have to be prioritized, says Prahlad Joshi. Okay, interesting. Bengal giant of Indian cinema bids farewell at 90. Okay, so this is Mr. Shyam Benegal. He was a very famous director, made a lot of famous movies, and he has passed away. Rest in peace. Kashmiri artisans gives wing to the dodo. Dodo is an extinct bird. It became extinct in 1600s. यहाँ पे लिखा होगा कहीं 1681. Yes. So interesting. Let's move on to what else is important from a competitive point of view. This is city-based news, so we can skip this. Again, city-based news. This is an interesting one. We'll talk a little bit about this. AI-generated content spices up the Aam Aadmi Party BJP narrative war in Delhi. So what is happening is that both the parties are now using AI-generated videos to take a dig at the other party. We'll explore this topic a little bit when we come back to our analysis slide. So hold on to that. Let's browse through the newspaper first. Then we have state-based news. This is not important. Nothing important here. Nothing important here. Nothing important here. All state based news. All right. This is the editorial section. This is an important article. India's steel frame does need a check. Which steel frame are we talking about? We are not talking about actual steel production or manufacturing. We are talking about the Indian Administrative Services. In short, the IAS. The legacy and the challenges of the IAS are discussed in this article. How government has often pushed for reform, that has been discussed. And what are the challenges in these reforms, that has been discussed in this particular article. We'll talk about this in a little more detail when we come back to our analysis, but interesting article, this one. The gatification of World Trade Organization. Now, what is this about? The gatification of World Trade Organization. So World Trade Organization is an international body which regulates trade and treaties and tariffs regarding international trade, right? Trade between countries. A lot of member countries, 160 plus member countries, represents around 98% of the global trade. India is also a member. And this WTO is trying to establish an appellate body. What do we mean by an appellate body? Where you can appeal against the decision of WTO. So US is trying to not let WTO establish an appellate body because they believe that that would benefit China and that would jeopardize the interest of US. We'll understand how. Why is it called the GATTification? Because GATT was the treaty which was there in place before WTO. So before WTO was formed, the arrangement, the you could say mechanism which governed international trade was called GATT. The full form was General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. And then GATT was replaced by WTO. So they are trying to say that we are going backwards in direction. We are moving towards GATTification, which means something which we have already left behind. And that is what the article is about regarding forming an appellate body, the promise of forming an appellate body since 1995 when WTO was established. Then how has it unraveled? What is the role of China? What is the role of US? And then how has regime change, impacted this? Be it the arrival of Obama in US, then subsequently Trump, then subsequently Biden, and now again Trump. How has regime change impacted this? That is also discussed. So we'll talk a little bit about this in detail. Then we have envisioning India as a global skill supplier. Now, this is self-explanatory as a title, that how we as a country who have a lot of young population, who have a huge population, can be a global skill supplier. Like China is a manufacturing supplier. China supplies goods and China supplies articles to other countries. Similarly, we can supply labor, or we can supply skilled labor to other countries because we have that in abundance. We all know that a lot of foreign companies outsource their labor to India, be it skilled labor, be it unskilled labor, or be it chief executive officers. So Indians are working as skilled people across the globe. And how can we regulate that process? How can we streamline that process is what is discussed in this particular article. How can we look at the immigration policies? How can we look at the aging society in different countries like Japan? How can we look at the requirement of young labor and the declining fertility rates in some countries? How can we look at economically diversified strategies in which we do not compromise our interest as well as serve as a global supplier? So what they are saying is currently the policy structure is quite fragmented. It's scattered. We need to have a more uniform structure. And then they talk about the way forward. How can we move in the right direction in this context? India must design a comprehensive national policy on international labor migration with skill-centered migration anchored as one of the fundamental pillars, right? So that is what this article is all about. Indian visa denials linked to fraud, not housing crisis in Australia. This is not that important for us. India's reliance on China for critical minerals. This we have discussed multiple times, so we would not be investing time on this. Let's just go through the gist of the article. China's dominance extends beyond reserves to include processing and refining, with control over 87% of rare earths processing, 58% of lithium refining, 68% of silicon processing. In depth examination of import data of 30 critical minerals spanning from this time period to this time period reveals India's accurate vulnerability to Chinese supplies, particularly in the six critical minerals, where dependency exceeds 40%. That means we are importing more than 40% from China itself. Despite being endowed with significant mineral resources, India's heavy reliance on imports stem from several structural challenges in its mining and processing ecosystem. So, what they're trying to say here is, although we have a rich mineral ecosystem, we have a lot of minerals in India, but there are multiple challenges. Sometimes the minerals are of not that quality which can be used. Sometimes they are of that quality, but it's difficult to mine them. Sometimes even if you mine them, it is difficult to process them because we don't have the technological capability or infrastructure to process those minerals. So that is why we are highly dependent on China for procuring these minerals and even processing these minerals. That is what the article is telling you about. Why has the Ministry of Home Affairs reimposed restrictions in three northeastern states? So this is called the protected area regime, where they have, tightened the grip of the police administration and the armed forces, and multiple restrictions have been imposed. This is mostly to control the law and order situation, the internal conflict which is going on. So that is the article about it. Let's read the gist of it. On December 17, MHA reimposed the protected areas regime in states of Manipur, Nagaland, and Mizoram to restrict and monitor the movement of foreigners. A copy of circular accessed by Hindu said that the matter was examined by the ministry in the backdrop of growing security concerns in the border states. From now on, foreigners visiting these three states would have to seek prior permission and protected area permits from the government. So that is the gist of the article. How does Google's GenCast AI, which predicts the weather, work? This is not that important from a competitive point of view, but if you are interested in learning more about this, definitely give this a read. Jaishankar's 6-day US visit will kick off today. So he'll be having talks with Antony Blinken, who is the US Secretary of State. Others in what may be the last engagement with Biden administration. So please excuse the noise if it's coming through the class. If it's coming through my mic, there's a party going on in the background, Christmas party. But yeah, former Supreme Court judge named Human Rights Panel Chief, Justice V. Subramaniam. Okay. So he has been appointed as the chairperson of National Human Rights Commission, NHRC. So this is a one-liner which you can remember, Justice V. Rama Subramanian. Okay. All right. Moving on. At Christmas celebrations, PM condemns attempts to incite violence in society. Rahul meets kin of Dalit man who died in judicial custody. Charge sheet against youth for passing data to Pakistani handlers. All right. Center committed to protecting farmers and consumers. This is an interview of Prahlad Joshi, who's the Food and Consumer Affairs Minister. Then again, we have politics-based news, which we can skip. Filmmaker who gave a voice to the voiceless held dear the idea of India. We're talking about Sham Benegal. Center scraps no detention policy for class 5 and 8, lays stress on remedial measures. This is an article which we'll discuss in a little bit of detail when we go back to our analysis. Amit Shah warns of disruptive powers of fake news in society. So you're talking about artificial intelligence. This is related to that. So fake news is currently very rampant in India, and although measures have been taken by the government, they also created a fact check portal recently to check fake news which is circulated, but that was just related to news about the government, not in general. But this is a major issue in the country right now. Senior Naxal leader held in Chhattisgarh. Okay. MFN not to hit India EFTA pact. So this we have already discussed. MFN means most favored nation. This was a tag which we had by the Switzerland government and which has been withdrawn. Now, India and Switzerland also had an EFTA pact, which is your economic trade partnership related pact. And they're saying that this would not impact the removal of the MFN tag would not impact the EFTA pact which we have with Switzerland and three other countries. Which are the three other countries? Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. So four countries in total. We have the EFTA, which is the European Free Trade Agreement. ICAI panel probing alleged auditing lapses in Baiju's case. Okay, so ICAI is the apex body of chartered accountants. And they are checking this Baiju's Wala case. Sensex Nifty and 5-day losing streak. Switzerland's TIL to invest 20,000 crore in Vadhavan port. TIL is Terminal Investment Limited. This is a company, a Swiss company. They are investing in the Vadhavan port. Vadhavan port is in Maharashtra. Adani to buy plane MRO from Airworks. Okay. How to tax popcorn? India's formula sparks outrage against GST system. We were talking about this yesterday, that the GST Council has discussed about popcorn and its different categories and deferred the more important issues. So that is what it's about. Then on the world page, we have anything important? Nothing as such. Some progress made on Gaza hostage deal, says Netanyahu. Bangladesh anti-graft panel to probe Russia-backed Rupur nuclear plant. Modi's silence on 13A due to lack of pressure from Tamil Nadu, Sri Lankan Tamil parties. Okay. Pant has the X factor to leave his imprint on Australian shores again. This is the sports section. Anything important here? Not really. Nothing noteworthy in the sports section today. I think that brings us to the end of today's newspaper overview. Now let's talk about the 3 4 articles which I said we'll be discussing in a little more detail. Let's go to those articles. I'll quickly share the presentation tab with you all. Just give me a moment. Anshi is here, Ashnur is here, Hari is here, Tenma is here. Good afternoon, guys. What is affiliate body? Depends on the context, Pranchi. Gunja is here. Hello. New tax on cars, is that justified? So cars, maybe specifically EV and second-hand cars, pay the taxation has been revised, and of course, it's not being seen as a welcome and positive move because we are trying to move towards an EV infrastructure, a non-renewable energy-based resource infrastructure in terms of transportation, and it's definitely a step backward because this would increase the cost of EV vehicles. So I don't know. I mean, there are multiple things which go behind policy making. I cannot really comment whether it's good or bad, but from the onset, from the bird's eye view, it does not really look like a step in the right direction. But yeah, let's see. Can you brief what exactly is the 13th constitutional amendment of the Sri Lankan constitution, as it was in news previously as well? Okay, we'll look at it. We can definitely look at it. Let's begin with our analysis session of 24th December. So I've picked up 4 articles out of the few which we discussed in the newspaper. First is the AI war, which is going on between political parties. This is interesting to note because of some key current affairs related developments which have happened in the field of AI. So, what developments I'm talking about, I'll come to that. Then I'll discuss the no detention scrapped, the policy of no detention, which has been scrapped for standard 5 and standard 8 students, class 5 and class 8. Then we'll discuss the IAS wala editorial article. Then we'll discuss the WTO and appellate body wala article to a little bit extent. Now, talking about the first AI based article, let me just quickly change the slide for you all. So, AI generated content spices up the Aam Aadmi Party BJP narrative war. Now, what was happening is, let me give you a little bit of background context. I don't know how many of you followed that, but recently there were some comments on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar from both the ends, and one of the parties, Aam Aadmi Party, was agitated by what our Home Minister has said about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and they generated an AI video in which Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is blessing Arvind Kejriwal as his son. So that was an AI video which was circulated on the internet by Aam Aadmi Party, and in retaliation, the BJP, the ruling party, also released a video where they showed Kejriwal and Atishi laughing among themselves and discussing how they had fooled the people of India in the name of scholarships for Dalit students, how they have scammed the students of Delhi. So it's a dirty politics sort of a game which is going on, and they're using AI to their advantage in this. But how justified is AI in smearing each other's political agendas and all of those things is what we need to look at. Now, talking about the current affairs context, so recently there was a GPAI summit, which is the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, and India was the lead chair of this GPAI in 2024. Let me write this down for you. GPAI, Global Partnership on AI Summit 2024. And the declaration, because it happened in India, the declaration was called the New Delhi Declaration. And even before that, there have been multiple developments. The first and foremost of them was the UK AI Safety Summit, which happened in England, Bletchley Park, England. So the UK AI Safety Summit, which happened in 2023, Bletchley Park, England. Now, why is this particular summit important? Because in this particular summit, a lot of important countries participated and they discussed how we need to proceed with the use of AI in a safe and robust manner where we don't promote the misuse of AI. And this was the first ever AI safety summit regarding. This was the first summit where safety and AI were discussed hand in hand. What were the challenges which were discussed in dealing with artificial intelligence? There are multiple challenges. Firstly, there is of course a bias which is present in artificial intelligence or machine learning models, language models. There is always a bias based on the data which you feed. So if you are feeding a data, let's say, which is homophobic, the AI would give you responses which are homophobic in nature. So that is just one hypothetical example. Then of course it is always creating a fear of taking away jobs from people in the service sector, how AI can lead to job losses, and basically a lot of things can now be automated using AI. Then of course there is the issue of cyber security, how it can lead to terrorist attacks, cyber attacks, how it can be used to steal sensitive data. You must have seen multiple cases of people being robbed of Bitcoin using cyber attacks, using artificial intelligence. So all of those things are also there. Then of course there is another misuse of artificial intelligence, which is spreading misinformation using deep fakes. Many of you must have seen, not seen, but heard of deep fake videos of women, which are, of course, not in the right spirit. And of course, AI has also been used to influence public opinion as well in elections and other campaigns. So there are multiple challenges related to safety with regards to artificial intelligence, and we need to, have a framework in place where we can proceed in a safe direction while going on with the developments in AI. So that is one thing which I wanted to discuss here. Now, moving on to the next article, which is the no detention policy thing. Let's talk a little bit about that. Center scraps no detention policy for classes 5, 8, lays stress on remedial measures. Now, what is this all about? So, they are saying that they would now hold back students who are unable to clear the year end examinations in Standard 5 and Standard 8. This is a publication by Ministry of Education. They have put out a gazetted notification on 16th of December, which says that right of children to free and compulsory education would now be amended in a way where students of classes 5 and 8, if they are not able to clear the regular examinations, the year end examinations, they would be held back, and there would be remedial measures in order to close in the learning gaps which are there in their learning process. Now, many of you might have heard about the right to free education. This came through the Right to Education Act of 2009, where we said that we would educate students free of cost in government schools. And recently, there was also a lot of developments through the new education policy, which came in 2020. Now, after all of these changes, why is this particular measure being taken place? Why are we detaining students of class 5 and 8? Because we don't want them to proceed while their foundation of basic subjects is weaker, because a major radical shift happens in class 6 and class 9 in terms of how the difficulty level increases in the academic curriculum. So they want the students to have that sort of clarity so that they do not get left behind even if they are promoted. So they want students to be on that certain similar pedestal when they are getting promoted to standard 6 or standard 9. Now, right to education for children is also a fundamental right, which is mentioned under which article? It's mentioned under Article 21A. So if someone asks you, is this a fundamental right? Yes, it is under Article 21A. This is also a DPSP under Article 39 and Article 45, which talks about making education more equitable, making it more accessible, how state would be funding the education. So Article 45 and Article 39F also talk about education for children. And there have been multiple landmark cases in this regard as well, but you don't need to go in such depth. What you need to know is right to education was included as a fundamental right through the 86th Amendment, which came in 2002. So the 86th Amendment to the Constitution in 2002 led to the inclusion of right to education as a fundamental right. Fundamental rights are in which part of the Indian Constitution? Which part of the Indian Constitution talks about fundamental rights? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which part? And she's saying means there will be amendment in Article 21A. Not necessarily. There would be not exactly an amendment in Article 21A. This would just change the rules on how it would apply. So the rules of how the application of it works would be amended. No, not part two, Priyanshi. Fundamental rights are in part three of the Indian Constitution. Very important question. This is part three of the Indian Constitution talks about fundamental rights. Part four talks about DPSPs. Okay. Fundamental rights are in which article? Article 12 to 35. So Article 12 to 35 talk about fundamental rights. Okay. So these are basics you guys need to know on your fingertips. The RTE Act came in 2009, the Right to Education Act, and what was I telling you? This was regarding students of age 6 to 14. So the bill came in 2008, but the Act, Right to Education Act, came in 2009, which talked about free education for children from the age of 6 to 14 years of age. And again, special provisions for reservations for students from the marginalized section, from the SC/ST background, from the socially backward background, for differently able students. So this has 25% reservation for them as well. So that is what we are talking about in context of fundamental rights and right to education. How we want to close the gaps between learning of students, and how we just don't need to promote the students but also ensure that they are learning things in school, because right to education is something which is very fundamental to the development of a nation. The education, if not solid, would lead to so many lapses in future. So yeah, that is why this stress is being laid on remedial measures and to make students improve rather than just promoting them. Okay, now moving on to the next topic, India's steel frame does need a check. Now we are talking about the infrastructure related to the Indian administrative services and how we need more, advanced or reformed approach to looking at Indian administrative services, because there are a lot of, I would say, loopholes, challenges, things which need improvement, things which need reforms. What are the things which need reforms? What are the problems with the Indian administrative services? Some of them which the article discusses is how the the framework is not evolving with the need of the time. So there is no meritocracy. There is just pure bureaucracy, which is influenced by a lot of politics. Uh, Officers which are honest in their work are sent transferred to remote locations or non-powerful positions, whereas people who have political connections are promoted. The promotions are not based on merit; they are just based on how strongly you are connected, or how where your political loyalty lies. So the questions of morals and professionalism takes a backseat when we talk about the Indian administrative service. Now, this is true for most of the cases. I'm not saying that all the IAS officers are like that, but it is tough for the honest ones to carry on their duty with complete integrity. The effectiveness of the administrative services is not being utilized to the fullest extent because of these inefficiencies, because of issues like corruption, because of so much red tapeism. All of these things are detrimental to the policy making, to the policy implementation, and the executive led governance in India. Now, what are the other things which need to be reformed? There have been, attempts in reforming the administrative services. For example, the article talks about the first Administrative Reform Commission, which came in 1966, which talked about specializations, which talked about merit based promotions, which talked about accountability. Then another ARC came, which is the Administrative Reform Commission in 2005. The second ARC came. This also had a blueprint where they talked about lowering the age limit for entry into civil services. They talked about performance based promotions. They talked about lateral entries from specialized departments. They talked about arbitrary transfers. But were any of these recommendations taken into consideration? The answer to that is no. They were not. They were not implemented. All of these commissions and committees have just come and they have gone over the past 50, 60 years, but there have been no changes in how the civil services are operating. Now, this becomes important in light with the recent development which has happened in US. The US has proposed a Department of Government Efficiency. Department of Government Efficiency, in short called DOGE. And one entrepreneur is chairman of this particular DOGE. Can you name the guy? Which entrepreneur, billionaire I'm talking about, who has been appointed as one of the heads of DOGE? Did anyone of you follow that news? डीओजी से आपको हिंट मिल सकता है इसका किस एंटरप्रेन्योर की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ. डोज कॉइन के लिए कौन सा एंटरप्रेन्योर फेमस था? मेड अ लॉट ऑफ ट्वीट्स अराउंड डोज कॉइन. Elon Musk, absolutely. Elon Musk is the right answer. So Elon Musk has been appointed as the chair, not chair, but like one of the senior heads of Department of Government Efficiency, along with Vivek Ramaswamy, who's also of Indian origin. So these are experts who would be leading this organization, this department, and this would, reform the administrative apparatus which is in operation in US. So maybe we can take a page out of their book and learn something from US and do some reforms in our administrative services as well, rather than just carrying on with the inefficient system where there's so much politicization, there's so much corruption, there's so much so on. Can go on this, but yeah, forming a commission or forming a body which can regulate the Indian administrative services, that would be a good step in the right direction, and that would help us counter the challenges faced by Indian bureaucracy, Indian executive, and that is what this article basically talks about. So let's move on to the last article of the day, which is the gatification of the World Trade Organization. When did World Trade Organization come into being? When was it founded? When did it start? The World Trade Organization. Does anyone know? 1995. It came into being in 1995, and this primarily governs the international law related to trade agreements, related to tariffs, related to treaties, and so on. This is based in which city? The World Trade Organization has its headquarters in which city? Its headquarters is in Geneva, Switzerland. A lot of headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, along with WTO. So this is a organization which is an international body which regulates almost 98% of the trade which happens globally. And why is the US administration against establishing an appellate body in the World Trade Organization? What is an appellate body? Appellate body, for example, when you file a case in the district court and the decision is not in your favor, you go to the High Court and you appeal to the High Court, right? You file an appeal in the higher courts or the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court becomes an appellate body in that case. Similarly, for World Trade Organizations, for decisions made by WTO, for treaties made by WTO, there is no appellate body which can be, moved to challenge the current status quo of WTO. And the US also does not want to have a dispute settlement system of WTO because the current framework is favoring US policies. And they believe that if a dispute settlement system is formed, this would be detrimental to their goals, to their capitalistic ideal goals. And this is for this you also need to understand some of the historical context and background. This obstruction is not new. This began from the Obama administration time, and then was carried forward by Donald Trump, carried forward by Joe Biden. Now again Trump is in power, and he's also against the, I would say, appellate body formation. So they have a very sort of protectionist stance towards trade and economy for the US. They don't really want to put it out there in the world where everyone can question them. So that is what they are looking at. WTO की अगर हम बात करें, WTO, as I said, was mentioned in, was formed in 1995. Major milestone in the field of international law. It has helped consolidate and gave a structure to international trade, gave a lot of treaties which have helped in international trade. It was succeeded by the GATT, which was the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. GATT was in operation from 1948 to 1994. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, the GATT, and this was replaced by the WTO subsequently. And yeah, in 2001, an interesting thing happened. US favored the inclusion of China to WTO. So US sort of campaigned that China should be included in WTO because at that time China was moving with its state-led industrial practices. They were growing rapidly as a manufacturing hub, and US wanted to capitalize on that. So they said कि China को भी include कर लेते हैं WTO में. And now China is just creating a lot of problems for US in the WTO. Let's just put it that way, because China does not really want to adopt free market principles. They did not want to earlier, but now they want to. They want to expand their trade to each and every country. And US is moving towards a protectionist sort of a regime. So that is why there is this tiff where US is blocking the formation of an appellate body for the WTO, right? So that is what the article is about. WTO का मैंने आपको बता ही दिया. 164 member countries हैं as of now, established on 1st January 1995. And that brings us to the end of today's Hindu analysis session. We discussed 4 articles in detail. We discussed 3-4 other articles in a brief manner as well. But yeah, that's pretty much all from my side. I'll meet you guys now on 26th of December. Tomorrow would be off day because on account of Christmas. So Merry Christmas to all of you. Celebrate, party, and enjoy your time. And yeah, we'll meet again on 26th of December. That's all for today. Harshit is saying symbiosis के इंटरव्यू के लिए कुछ टिप्स दे दीजिए. चलो, I'll try to make a short on that. I'll try to create a short video on that. ठीक है. बाकी we'll continue our discussion in a new session on 26th December, day after tomorrow. See you guys. Bye bye. Take care. Thank you so much. Signing off.